You are sitting in a coffee shop right now. You are scrolling through your phone, looking at photos, maybe waiting for a friend. You glance up and see someone walk in. They are a bit shorter than you, maybe 5'5", but they are built like a tank, thick chest, wide shoulders, heavy brow ridge, and they are wearing a perfectly tailored suit. They order a latte, sit down, and pull out a laptop. You realize you are looking at a Neanderthal, and they are just another person living in your city. So what would the world actually look like if Neanderthals had never gone extinct and were living alongside us today? This is not just a wild Ceph idea. It is a question that forces us to look in the mirror. For most of human history, we were not alone. We shared this planet with other human species. We interbred with them. We fought with them. We probably learned from them. But today, Homo sapiens are the only ones left. If Neanderthals had survived, they would completely change how we think about biology, society, and what it even means to be human. First, we have to look at the physical reality. Neanderthals were not clumsy cavemen. They were apex predators perfectly adapted to the Ice Age. They were incredibly strong. Their bone density was higher than ours. Their muscle mass was huge. If a Neanderthal wanted to arm wrestle an average modern human, the modern human would lose every single time. So how would society adapt to two different physical types of humans? Everything would have to be built in two sizes: office chairs, car seats, door frames, power tools. A smartphone designed for a Neanderthal would need a bigger screen and sturdier buttons for thicker fingers. Sports would be completely segregated. You could not have a Neanderthal competing against a Homo sapiens in rugby or boxing. The physical advantage would just be too massive, but maybe they would dominate powerlifting while we would dominate marathon running. Our bodies are built for endurance. Theirs were built for explosive power and surviving extreme cold. Then there is the issue of diet. Neanderthals needed a lot of calories. Estimates suggest they needed maybe 4,000 to 5,000 calories a day just to maintain their muscle mass in a cold climate. That is double what most of us need today. A Neanderthal walking into a grocery store is going to need a lot of meat. Their ancient diets were heavily carnivorous. If they lived today, the agricultural industry would be under massive strain trying to produce enough high-density protein. The environmental impact of feeding a population of Neanderthals would be staggering. Maybe they would be the primary consumers of lab-grown meat just to keep the planet sustainable. We also have to think about medicine. Our bodies are different. We know from genetic studies that Neanderthals had different immune responses. Some of the genes they passed down to us actually affect how we fight off viruses today. A disease that is a minor cold for us might be devastating to them, or vice versa. The medical system would have to be completely dual-track. Doctors would need different dosages for medications, different surgical tools, and completely different fields of specialized research. There would be Homo sapiens doctors and Neanderthal doctors, but the biggest challenge would not be physical. It would be mental and social. How smart were they? The old stereotype is that they were dumb brutes, but archaeologists have found evidence that Neanderthals made jewelry. They painted in caves. They buried their dead with care. They used complex tools and fire. They had big brains, maybe even slightly larger than ours on average, but their brains were shaped differently. The areas controlling vision and body mastery were larger. The areas for complex social networking might have been smaller. So how would a Neanderthal mind navigate the modern world? They might be incredibly focused, brilliant at solitary tasks, engineering, or detailed craftsmanship. But they might struggle in massive, chaotic social situations. Our modern world is built on huge networks of strangers cooperating. Homo sapiens are incredibly good at living in cities of millions. Neanderthals lived in smaller, tighter groups. A modern metropolis might be overwhelming for them, not just culturally but neurologically. Imagine a typical day for a Neanderthal living in modern London or New York. They wake up in an apartment specially designed for heavier bodies. The bed frame is reinforced steel. They eat a massive breakfast, maybe 2 pounds of steak and a dozen eggs. They take the subway to work, having to duck slightly as they get on the train. People stare, but they are used to it. At work, they might be an architect or a structural engineer, roles that require deep focus and spatial awareness. They probably prefer a quiet office over an open-plan layout. After work, they skip the crowded bars and head to a small private dinner with their tight-knit family. They do not use social media much. They just do not feel the urge to broadcast their lives to thousands of strangers. This brings up the darkest part of the thought experiment: racism and discrimination. Human beings already have a terrible track record of discriminating against people who look just slightly different from them. Imagine the prejudice against a completely different species. There would undoubtedly be tension. Who gets the better jobs? Who gets the political power? Would there be Neanderthal nations and Homo sapiens nations? If they were a minority, they would likely face intense marginalization. Politicians might use them as scapegoats. There could be civil rights movements specifically for Neanderthal equality. Intermarriage would happen, just like it did 50,000 years ago, but it might be highly controversial in some societies. The social friction would be a constant, low-level hum in the background of everyday life. We also have to wonder about religion and philosophy. Most major religions are built on the idea that humans are unique, created in a specific image, and alone at the center of the universe. The existence of another intelligent, self-aware species right next to us would shatter that. Theologians would have to completely rewrite their doctrines. Are Neanderthals part of the same divine plan? Do they have the same spiritual standing? Philosophy would have to grapple with what it means to be a person when there are two distinct types of people. Let us look back at the historical turning point that got us here. Around 40,000 years ago, Neanderthals vanished. We do not know exactly why. Maybe the climate changed too fast. Maybe we outcompeted them for food. Maybe we brought diseases they could not fight. Or maybe we just absorbed them through interbreeding until they disappeared as a distinct group. But whatever happened, it left us alone. That isolation allowed us to build a world entirely around our own specific traits. We built a world for our bodies, our brains, and our social habits. If they had survived, that turning point never happens. History is a shared project. The Industrial Revolution, the Agricultural Revolution, the space race, all of it would have been done together, or maybe in parallel, competing tracks. The world map might look completely different, carved up not just by culture, but by species. Think about how you live right now. You are perfectly adapted to the world we built. You can easily navigate a crowded room, digest a grain-heavy diet, and slip into the seat of a compact car. You are surrounded by people who are, biologically speaking, exactly like you. But if Neanderthals were still here, you would constantly be reminded that your way of being human is not the only way. You would share the sidewalk with people who are stronger, perhaps quieter, moving through the world with a completely different ancient rhythm. We would not be the lonely lords of the planet. We would just be one branch of the family tree, trying to get along with the other.